Welcome to the Age of Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark, where we constantly remind you that love is greater than fear and happiness is resistance. Good evening. This is your host, Lonnie Clark, with the Age of Fission radio show. I want to thank you for joining us, and I want to thank KEPWLP here in Eugene, Oregon, 97.3 for carrying my radio show. And this is the last show before Christmas. The holidays are always a very interesting time when you're doing reporting on nuclear contamination, because this isn't the time of year when people want to start thinking about how we've all been poisoned. But the fact is, we have been poisoned, and we've been living in a poisoned environment really since the end of World War II, right? So today I thought I'd do something a little bit different. I am going to do a reading by Dr. Helen Caldicott's book, The New Nuclear Danger. We're almost at the end. I think we've only got another chapter or two, so we're just about finished with that project. And then I'm hoping that I can be getting some interviews going on with folks. And I'm actually going to be interviewing Dave Parrish, who I have been putting his show, Fuku Fridays here, and I'm going to put that in before. Normally I put it in after the reading, but I think I'm going to put it in before the reading tonight because it was a pretty inspiring message that he had last Friday, and I hope all of you follow him. That's Dave Parrish, Parrish, on YouTube. The YouTube community has come and gone in terms of nuclear contamination, and there's just not a lot of people out there, and the reason is people get harassed, and there is a lot of misinformation and a lot of negative information. The quote powers that be want us to accept nuclear contamination as normal, just as they want us to accept pedophilia as normal and spousal abuse as normal. It's just considered what we're expected to take, and I personally don't buy that story. I think we need to push back against it, which is why I'm here on the air every week doing this radio podcast. But this week, because we're coming into the holidays, I thought I'd talk to us about ways that we could keep our bodies safe. I found an article on holisticsquid.com, and it was written... does it have a date on here? I don't think so. It's called Holistic Squid. It's called Healthy Living Demystified. Protect yourself from radiation exposure with one common sense step, right? Nuclear radiation 101. That's what this whole thing talks about. Blah, blah, blah. Iodine 131. The whole usual. I don't know about you guys, but I am sick to death about talking about all these radionuclides. The fact is, it's not that we are going to be contaminated. We are contaminated, period. This whole idea of, we're going to breathe in plutonium. We've all breathed in plutonium. Get over it. They bombed the daylights out of us like nobody's business after World War II. I mean, Fukushima is a drop in the bucket compared to what they did to us after World War II. When you think about the levels of radioactive contamination, and plutonium's half-life is 24,500 years. So it's still out there. But as you can see, we're all breathing and kicking and having fun and just about to celebrate Christmas, so it's obviously not that terrible. There's things that you can do to expose yourself, to protect yourself from radiation exposure that you really, really, really do want to add into your life. First thing is you want to get enough vitamin D. And of course that comes from the sun, but you can buy a really good vitamin D drops, like you take 1 drop a day or something. You want to make sure you're taking enough vitamin D. It does seem to stave off the effects of nuclear radiation. You also want to take antioxidants. And that means eating a diet rich in seasonal fruits, vegetables, spices, and oils. That's where you get most of it. I know that you can take high levels of vitamin C. Dr. Circus, that's SIRCUS.com, Dr. Circus. He suggests everybody take a half a teaspoon of baking soda every single morning, because evidently the baking soda attracts the toxins and your body flushes it out. So it's one of the things that you can do. Also you can eat fermented foods. So you want to make sure that you're getting in a bunch of good fermented foods on a regular basis. Yogurt, kefir, kombucha, miso. sauerkraut. Those things here in Eugene don't seem so odd, but around the globe sometimes that seems like odd food. So these are things that you can do. And then the other things that you can do is make sure you take turmeric. Turmeric is one of the best things you can take. I have a little drink that I drink quite regularly. And I read this recipe actually in the British Medical Journal. They were talking about a cure for Alzheimer's. And they said within 2 weeks of giving this to their Alzheimer's patients, they saw their memory come back and their symptoms of Alzheimer's decrease. So I'm going to share with you this little recipe. It's a drink that I have 3 or 4 times a week. And you take a teaspoon of turmeric, 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, 1/3 of a cup of coconut milk, a tablespoon of coconut oil, sweeten it to taste, and add hot water. You want to make sure it's hot water. The article said that it is the combination of the oil, the black pepper, the turmeric, and the hot water that brings the most effects, the curcumin, that's that healing effect inside the turmeric. It makes it work the best, right? So what it has a real strong ability to protect the cells from damage. So I highly recommend people kind of get used to that. Make that your little morning drink or your evening drink, one or the other, right? The other thing that you can do is take these medicinal mushrooms, the reishi or cordyceps. So you can either take them in capsules or liquids, and they help your liver eliminate. It's all about eliminating toxins, right? Now, this one in this article, I have actually never heard of this. It's called glutathione. Glutathione. I don't know what it's called. It's called the mother of all antioxidants. And I don't know how you get it in your system. Let's see. What does it say? Consume fresh whey and lacto-fermented foods. With whey contains cysteine, or an amino acid essential to glutathione synthesis. Exercise also boosts your glutathione levels and thereby helps boost your immune system, improving detoxification and enhances your body's own antioxidant defenses. So there you go, exercising. So let's see, there are a few more glutathione that body can assimilate more easily. I'm reading this article. And iodine, of course, most people do know about iodine. You can take a drop of iodine every few days, a good level of iodine. And spirulina, most people don't remember that spirulina is super, super, super healthy for you. So you want to make sure you take your teaspoon or 2 teaspoons of spirulina every single day. These algae supplements, chlorella and spirulina, have really good protective benefits against radiation. So why? Because they're cousins to the sea animals, right? So you want to make sure that you get them from a trusted source. And of course, this article talks about how to avoid radiation exposure in fish, seaweed, and milk. I personally think that it's in there. I think that they don't even test. It's like there's 3 tests that test on radiation exposure for women and children. Why aren't they testing? Because they know that it'll prove that we've all been contaminated, that it's really there. We're beyond safeguarding the planet from contamination. We're in full-on denial, right? So it's really important for us to own this and to figure out that we don't have to freak out and be all flipped out because we think that the world is, falling apart and we're never going to be able to make it, because we're making it. It's just we're living in a sick planet, and we're living in a planet that we have created as a contaminated place. And I personally don't think that there is one thing we are going to do to stop this train. It's going to have to stop itself, because the people in charge have absolutely no intention of helping us whatsoever. Just this week, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, there was a power reactor in Arkansas Nuclear in Arkansas, and it is down. It has 0 power generating. It went into scram mode. The way they talk about this, it's in hot standby. this happened on 12/18. Did we hear about it in the newspaper at all? At all? At all? That there is a nuclear power facility somewhere in Alabama? Is it Alabama? Arkansas? That is about to blow up? No, we're not going to hear about it. I'm telling you, the only reason we heard about Fukushima having any issues at all is because we saw it blow up right before our very eyes. If we had to rely on them to tell us what was wrong, they would never tell us. Just like they have never told us how hard it is on our children. This is why our kids have autoimmune deficiency diseases, why we have schizophrenia, why we have diabetes. We have been contaminated, and we are being contaminated, folks. Part of the reason why I'm reading this book by Dr. Helen Caldicott is so that people understand that the government is going full speed ahead with nuclear weapons, period. Whether they say it or not, they are going ahead. And it is up to us to pay attention and put pressure on them and push back. And in fact, in my view, to be honest, the whole nuclear denial is exactly identical to the denial of the genocide happening in Palestine. It's exactly the same. No one asked for this. It was imposed on every single individual involved in the process. And now everybody has to click their heels and say, Sig Heil. And we'll just do whatever you say, boss. Not really. We're not taking that anymore. So I honestly, this just infuriates me that we have to pretend like it's not that big a deal. It is a big deal. It is a big deal. And they are normalizing it more and more and more. Check out this. I'm scrolling through the NRC website, going back through the days. On 12/7, Louisiana Radiation Protection Division, Heart and Vascular Associates, PC. Non-emergency. This is a report to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Source abandonment through bankruptcy. This is the first time I've ever seen this. On or about December 3rd, an individual contacted KLS Physics to inform them he had acquired some sealed sources in a bankruptcy liquidation of assets. KLS Physics had provided physics support to HVA Heart and Vascular Associates PC for their radioactive materials program. KLS Physics instructed the individual to contact the radiation section to determine how to proceed solving or correcting the situation. They had sources of cesium-137 and cobalt-57. The activities range from 0.02 microcuries of cobalt-57 to 176 microcuries of cobalt-57. Wow. At this time, the department has taken possession of these sources. So the people involved in this, it makes you wonder what's going to happen to the people who've been walking around putting that stuff in their pockets, putting it in their drawers. This is just beyond comprehension, the total lack of regard for human life by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. There's another report on the 18th and the 10th. Now, this is the report for the 18th, right? So check, this is how these rats work. This event report was for the 17th through the 18th. This report is now being reported for notification. The event date was 12/3. So now they're telling us that they had this abandonment. There was another one on 12/7. A non-emergency potential overexposure by a medical personnel. These overexposures are underexposures by medical personnel, by the way. If you ever go to the U.S., it's called the nrc.gov. I encourage everyone to go there and play around with it. Look at this website. It is a shock. You will be knocked off your socks. Because it's not like they're hiding anything. They put it there right in plain sight. But guess what? Nobody pays attention to it. And if you do pay attention to it, you can't really... honestly, you can barely understand what they're talking about. I'm going to go around here on the Public Meetings and Involvement page on the NRC website so that you can... Documents for comment. Let's see what they have up there now for documents for comment, okay? Because they have all different kinds of things where we get to comment on stuff. American Society of Mechanical Engineers, Code Editions, Incorporation by Reference. What else? There's something else. Elimination of immediate notification requirements for non-emergency events. You know what the downside to that is? They get to decide what's a non-emergency event. Okay, so like that broken down nuclear power facility in Arkansas is considered a non-emergency event. It's shut down, but it didn't break down to the point where it's contaminated anybody, so they consider it a non-emergency event. It's just outrageous how these people, they walk around, they create these whole thing. I mean, it's beyond comprehension. And then there's comments for the approved list of spent fuel storage casks, Holtec International High Storm 100 Multi-Purpose Cask System, Certificates of Compliance number 1014, amendments number 11 and 12. You know what the Holtec storage casks are only 3/8 of an inch thick, folks. This is what the United States is doing to its nuclear waste. We're not storing it properly or safely. We store it above ground in a singular tube, and then they build a concrete block around it with vents at the bottom and at the top. So it's venting all the time, nuclear contamination. The worst part is Holtec knows these casks will crack in 20 years. And there is no getting inside to inspect them because they have to put them inside of an outer container on top of it because it's too radioactive. It's honestly, the whole system is designed for failure. The whole system. And we're just blithely going along thinking that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is protecting us. It's beyond comprehension. So then they also have public comments for license applications and amendments. Biweekly notice applications and amendments to facility operating licenses and combined licenses involving no significant hazards consideration. So this is what's wrong with this. They do these bi-weekly meetings, but who says there are significant hazard considerations? It's the NRC. And who tells the NRC that they have it? It is the operators, the licensees, actually tell them whether they have significant problems. The NRC doesn't actually oversee these things. It literally, this is why people tune out to this. And this is why I'm really grateful that whoever is out there listening is willing to listen, because this is really important. On the commentary closes on this one. This is super important. Oyster Creek Generating Station, consideration of approval of transfer of license and conforming amendment. Oh, that is dangerous because I don't know if any of you know, but the Oyster Creek Nuclear Generating Station is on its last leg. And it is seriously in serious need of closing down. And what they're trying to do is sell it off to someone else. And then they want to basically keep it running until it falls apart. This is their plan. Their plan is to run every single nuclear facility until it causes a nuclear meltdown. And then they have to shut it down. It is beyond comprehension. Application, this is what it says. Application for transfer, licensing, reopening of the comment period. Summary, on October 19th, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission solicited comments on Oyster Creek Generating Station, consideration of approval of transfer and license and conforming agreement. Let's open up the docket folder. They make it very complicated. You can't just open up one link. You have to actually keep linking and keep linking and keep linking. Because that's just the way they are, man. Because that's just who they are. Like, let's just don't tell anybody the truth. How about this one? Let's see if this first one opens up. Comment now. Do they tell us this? You know, this is the sad part. They don't actually tell us what they're considering. Rulemaking website. You have to go to the rulemaking website. You cannot just look at this document and go right there. This, in fact, is the mind that they do on purpose to us so that people will turn away from this. so that we do not pay attention to the fact that they are poisoning every single person on this planet with nuclear contamination, and have, and will continue to do so. And they just want us to go shopping. Let's just go shopping, folks. Why not? We can just go shopping. How about that? I don't know. I'm so over all of it, of being nice about it. I mean, when I first got into this fight, when I found out about Fukushima, I followed a YouTuber called Kevin Blanche, and he screams and pisses and moans and really vulgar liar, exaggerator, kind of like that liar on Saturday Night Live, you know. But the fact is, his activism is great because he gets mad. And he, you know, like he reminds people, it's dying. He goes out to the ocean. The ocean is dying. People want to pretend like the Pacific Ocean is healthy. No, it's not. And it's not just caused from global warming, folks. It's caused from nuclear contamination. Look, most of this audience has already seen Inconvenient Truth. And if you look at, you know, remember that big scene where he gets up on that ladder and the machine raises him up and says, this is where we are now with the carbon. If you put a map on that date when they started nuclear testing, so now they want to say it's caused by fossil fuels. But there has been no testing on the effect of nuclear radiation on global warming. Zero. There has been a blanket statement that says it has no effect. The solution to pollution is dilution. That's what they say. There has been no real testing on the effects of nuclear contamination on global warming, or on the planet change, or on climate change, or whatever you want to call it, the dying environment that we're living in. We're like frogs in a pot of water right now. We might as well go shopping because we're not being able to jump out. So what's the point of this show? And this is the thing that I think about every week. What is the point of this show? The point of this show is to encourage people to actively engage. Now, I doubt if in Eugene, Oregon, and Springfield there are 30 people that listen to this show who will actually pick up their fingers and call Ron Wyden's office and say, we have to close the Columbia Generating Station. But I'm hoping that every single person who listens to this show will call Ron Wyden, will call Jeff Merkley, and will call Pete DeFazio and tell them we need to close Columbia Generating Station because of the proximity factor. Because we are on a ticking time bomb, folks. And it is going to happen. It is not when, it is going to happen. So the point of this show is to activate people before the major disasters happen. And we're like, oh my God, we didn't know. Yes, we do know. Just like in Germany when they were dragging all those people to the death camps, those surrounding families, they knew. They could smell the burning bodies. They knew. There's no denying it. We know. We know. We see the childhood cancer. We see the youth dying of heart attacks. We see it. A 19-year-old student has a heart attack. Why? They don't know why. Why does a 19-year-old student have a heart attack? I mean, one of my daughter's friends died of a heart attack at 23 years old. Why was that? There's no question about where he was born, where was he raised, what level of exposure to nuclear contamination did his mother receive when he was in utero. These are the complicated questions that we have to ask, that they are not even thinking about. In fact, they are doing everything they can to not think about it, which is why I do this podcast. Because I was like everyone else. I thought the government was handling it. I thought the Nuclear Regulatory Commission was actually protecting us. I didn't realize they were the Nuclear Rubber Stamp Commission. And that's basically what they do. Anything the nuclear industry wants, they get. And now our United States military is now up to selling depleted uranium weapons as part of their standard fare. We're just going to blow nuclear weapons up on everybody. Anybody who wants to buy little mini nuclear weapons from us, these depleted uranium weapons, go right ahead. We're one of the major sellers. In fact, I think we're the main sellers of depleted uranium weapons. It's beyond comprehension that the populace just lets this happen and is like, oh, like the kids in jail, right? They're throwing kids in jail in this country. Oh my God, it's so beyond comprehension. Sick monsters. And yet, we're right about to enter in the new year. Christmas is about celebrating the birth of new life and new joy and new hope for the future. And I don't know about you guys, but that's what Christmas does for me. Like, I look forward, even though my children are gone, my household is usually empty on Christmas morning. I have to go to them. I find that if I don't put up a Christmas tree or celebrate Christmas, it doesn't feel like the year ends. There's something very special about having events and having celebrations at the end of the winter as winter closes in and we begin to plan for the new year. I think that humans have a need to celebrate the beginning of the new year. I think we just have this internal, intrinsic need of passing of time to make us feel as if we're moving forward. And for me, that's what Christmas is about. It's about loving your family, loving your friends, getting clear, letting go of relationships that no longer serve you and only embracing relationships that do serve you. You know, develop your own self-love recovery program. Refuse to be participating in narcissistic relationships. I mean, that's the hard part right now we have in our government right this very second is we have a president who's, you know, most presidents are pretty narcissistic, right? Or psychopaths. They don't care who they kill. But right now we have a president who is a psychopath and a narcissist, and it's a deadly combination for all of us involved, you know. And I would say that it really does get down to what's our level of commitment to each other as human beings. What is our commitment level? I personally feel very strongly that it's up to us. That we're the ones who are going to make our lives better. That everything that we want and have in life is right in front of us. We just need to be able to embrace the truth and figure out how to get around it. And do we know how long we're going to last? No, we have no idea how long we're going to last on this planet, how long humanity has to go. It's the first time I think that I can think about where we don't think about that. We don't comprehend that we could actually be ending our species because of gross negligence of the people in power. That's why I bring you this radio show. So I want to motivate people to embrace your life, embrace loving, appreciate every single day. Because we don't know how many days we have left. But you know what? Every day we have left, we can put up a good fight. Happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear. We can lean into life and find the solutions. So I'm going to stop here and I'm going to read a little bit from this book. But first I want to share with you this clip from Dave Parrish, who's the YouTuber that I talk about all the time. And I've added his clips in, but this week's clips from him was really great. So we'll talk to you guys on the other side of the 6-minute clip, and then I will do this reading from Dr. Caldicott. Hold on.
8 minutes is just the beginning of what you can do to give back to not only your community, but to the world as a whole. Hey y'all, it's Dave here from Operation Save the Earth, and this is the Fuku Friday Happy Hour Hangout for December 14th, 2018. The giving season is upon us, and I hope all my Jewish friends had a great Hanukkah to kick things off. The holidays are a time to reflect on the year that we've endured and offers hope in the new year for the future that's to come. And I remember when 2018 started. I said a lot was going to happen this year, and boy, has it. In a lot of ways, I look at this year as the one that people finally started to take the Fukushima nuclear disaster seriously. As predicted, the more time passed, the more the truth came out, and like the devastating amount of radiation that was released back in 2011, it spread over a wide area, so the people have to take it seriously. I mean, when you have a problem that's too big to sweep under the rug, what do you do about it? You take care of it. It's nice that the robot guys on 60 Minutes said that it'll take 50 years or more to get the job done, But the water issue is a universal one. After all, you don't think that Fukushima Daiichi is the only reactor that's leaking out there right now, do you? All reactors leak some form of radiation all the time, but the so-called experts always say it shouldn't affect human health in any way. Mostly because the radioactive standards have been raised so high in this post-Fukushima world that they can get away with saying it. So with these intrinsic truths in place, why do the bad guys still insist on pushing the nuclear agenda with its worn-out platitudes and outdated ideas? Same as ever, MONEY, right? Look, just because a few people invested heavily in uranium production, bomb creation, and nuke plant price gouging, the rest of us get to suffer for it? Now, does that seem fair to you? I mean, don't get me wrong. Make all the money you want in life, but doing so at the expense of your environment and the future of life on this planet seems really boneheaded to me. Hear me out, bad guys. I don't just make these videos every week for my friends and family, but for you too, because try as you might to outrun it, the effects of low-dose radiation can't be stopped by your bank account, okay? Your health may not concern you, but what about your kids and grandkids, nieces, nephews, friends with family? Everyone is affected by what you do. Now, if your primary goal in life is to die with all the toys, it may sound good as a t-shirt logo, but you will never be beloved for it. You see, the great R&B artist, Mr. James Brown, once wrote, "The pantry is big enough for everyone. Just take some and leave some." He knew that being greedy solely was no way to live. You got to give some back, no matter who you are, because otherwise you're just being a fill-in-the-blank expletive, right? And here's what you can do. Donate your time and resources to the greater good in order to keep the wheels moving. Now, I know what you're saying, Skeletor. Dave, you're asking me to be nice. I am not nice. I get that, all right, but look at it this way. If you're so into doing the evil that you do, whatever it is, what happens when you can't anymore because it's too radioactive to set foot outside or too toxic to eat the food? Then where are you going to be? That's right, in the same boat with everybody else. Tell you what, pro-nukers, do yourself and everyone else a favor by rewatching Alfred Hitchcock's 1944 adaptation of Lifeboat by John Steinbeck on Vudu or Amazon Prime this holiday season and start getting the point sometime. I mean, seriously, if y'all want to go on hating each other after we get out of this nuclear mess, be my guest. I'm not here to judge. All I'm saying is that right now, we have to pull together in order to stop what's happening from getting worse, which is happening all the time. And how do you get started? Guys, we talk about it every week. The Fuku fighters know how to do it. You take step one for yourself. Step one is to educate and safeguard. You got to know more, do more, be more about it, right? How do you do that? Go over to our website. Go to OperationSaveTheEarth.com. Get started on your journey today. Everything you need for resources is right there. And then when you're ready for that deeper dive, sign up for our free weekly newsletter that's available just by sending me an email at info@OperationSaveTheEarth.com, and I'll put you on that mailing list. Don't forget, we are also available on Twitter. You can follow us at OSTE 8 Minutes all spelled out, where you'll get all the latest Fukushima news of the week right there. So let me tell you a story about something that happened recently in my life. I was down at my favorite sports bar here in Phoenix watching my team play Monday Night Football. The guy sitting next to me was also a fan, so we got to talking about the team and our prospects for the playoffs. Turns out he was an engineer on a nuclear submarine. And despite our differences on the nuclear issue, guess what? We could still sit down with a beer and talk about the game together. It's not that hard to relate, guys, human to human, and in my experience, we are better together than apart in all facets of our existence here on this planet together. So, I got a question for you. Can we make 2019 a special time that everyone can appreciate? Let's find out together. So until next time, this is Dave saying peace and good fortune to everyone. Take care till then.
Well, I hope you liked that a little clip from Dave Parrish as much as I did. I thought it was really awesome. Let me get right to this reading from Dr. Helen Caldicott, The New Nuclear Danger, George W. Bush's Military-Industrial Complex. We have about 25 minutes. I'm only going to read for a little while, and I will be back next Thursday. I don't know how much of a reading I will. I am sensitive to the idea that it's difficult for people to listen for a full hour to any reading, but I'm very committed to getting this information out, and I appreciate Dr. Caldicott for giving me special permission to read it. So we are now on page 145, chapter 8. It's called Nuclear War in the Gulf and Kosovo. In 1990, shortly before he invaded Kuwait, which had been drilling oil beneath Iraq's border and selling it at a steep discount, President Saddam Hussein of Iraq approached the U.S. ambassador, April Glaspie, about his plan, and she indicated that the U.S. had no defense treaties or security commitments to Kuwait. In a subsequent face-to-face meeting with Glaspie, Hussein told her that Iraq was in dire economic straits and that the low oil price induced by Kuwait's and the United Arab Emirates overproduction was hurting them badly. She told Hussein that Iraq had a right to prosper, and Glaspie continued, "I know you need funds. We understand that, and our opinion is that you should have the opportunity to rebuild your country. But we have no opinion on the Arab conflicts, like your border disagreements with Kuwait." Subsequently, Glaspie lied about this conversation when she testified before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Quote, "I told him orally we would defend our vital interests, we would support our friends in the Gulf, and we would defend our sovereignty and integrity." Unquote. In response, when Iraq invaded Kuwait, belied Glaspie's reassurances. Contrary to Glaspie's no opinion on the Arab conflicts, the U.S. staged a military operation on Kuwait's behalf that had been planned for months and amounted to a veritable arms bazaar for U.S. weapons manufacturers. 80,500 tons of bombs, the equivalent of more than 7 Hiroshimas, were dropped on Iraq and Kuwait. Fewer than 7% of the weapons used were smart. Most were old-fashioned dumb bombs, and 70% of these did not hit military targets but fell on civilian areas. Smart bombs have computer guidance systems and map the terrain to guide them accurately to their targets. This technology, however, often fails. Dumb bombs are dropped from planes or may not land where they are intended. Contrary to accepted norms of wartime behavior, the U.S. attacked columns of retreating Iraqi soldiers and civilians with carrier-based planes using cluster bombs and napalm, the petroleum compound that adheres to the skin while burning. Returning pilots spoke of partaking in a duck and turkey shoot, or of shooting fish in a barrel. And it is an equally controversial move. The U.S. forces failed to support Iraqi dissidents or the Kurdish or Shia uprising at the end of the war, preventing the Iraqi troops who were rebelling against Saddam Hussein in the south of the country from reaching captured armed depots and circling in planes overhead as Hussein's helicopters slaughtered his own dissenting troops. Not one American or Allied soldier was killed by Iraqi soldiers, though some died through friendly fire. The response to Iraq's invasion of Kuwait also made history by another horrific reason. Operation Desert Storm was the first conflict in history to create a radioactive battlefield. America's deployment of radioactive uranium weapons in the Gulf countries, used as a basic tool of combat for the first time, has permanently contaminated the area and will continue to affect the citizens of the regions for thousands of years after the war ended. New subtitle: History of Uranium Weapons. During the 50s, the Department of Defense became interested in using uranium-238 to manufacture weapons for several reasons. Over 700,000 tons of the element were dispersed in various locations around the United States, a byproduct of nuclear weapons and nuclear power production. It had no specific use. It was free and it was dangerous. Several uses for the element were conceived. Uranium is 1.7 times more dense than lead and is therefore extremely effective as ammunition for penetrating metal armor. A 120 millimeter tank round, for example, contains about 10 pounds of solid uranium, which at high speed can slice through tank armor like a hot knife through butter. The Pentagon refers to uranium shells and bullets as nuclear-tipped. They are not. The shells are composed of solid uranium. The uranium is alloyed with other elements that may also be medically dangerous, but these materials are classified. Uranium-238 can also be used as armor plating in tanks because the density prevents penetration by conventional weapons. Uranium is heavy and thus works as a ballast for cruise missiles and aircraft. The U.S. began testing uranium weapons in 1954 at a secret place near the Los Alamos lab. They continued researching and testing at various locations around the U.S. during the 60s and 70s, and the first usable ammunition was produced in 1978, though it was not used in battle until Operation Desert Storm in 1991. New subtitle: Components of Uranium Weapons. Natural uranium found in the Earth's crust is composed primarily of two isotopes, uranium-235, the most valuable, which is present in concentrations of only 0.7%, and uranium-238, which is virtually worthless and constitutes the remaining 99.3%. Uranium-235 is a fissionable material and is used as fuel for nuclear weapons and nuclear reactors. It must be enriched to concentrations of 3% for reactors and over 50% for nuclear weapons. Enrichment is a process that involves converting the uranium ore to a gas, which is then forced through a minute pore in large nickel shields, separating the two isotopes. Also called gaseous diffusion, this process is extraordinarily energy-consuming. The process was first used during the Manhattan Project in the early 40s, and the Hiroshima bomb was a uranium-fueled weapon. Uranium-238, the unfissionable isotope, remained after enrichment, is dubbed depleted uranium, or DU. Over 60 years of uranium enrichment saw very few safeguards put in place, and regulations controlling the enrichment process were virtually non-existent. Most of the enrichment was conducted at Paducah Gaseous Diffusion Plant in Kentucky. It involved not just the pure uranium that had been extracted from the ground, but reclamation of uranium from nuclear reactors dedicated to manufacture of plutonium at Savannah River, South Carolina, at Hanford, Washington, and at Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Enrichment of reclaimed uranium poses special problems because a variety of other radioactive elements come into play during the process, polluting the uranium and posing additional health hazards. When uranium-235 is fissioned in a nuclear reactor, over 200 new radioactive elements are created, and the uranium, when mixed with its fissionable products, becomes 1 million times more radioactive than in its natural state. One of the most valuable byproducts of the fission process is plutonium, which is created when a uranium-238 atom captures a neutron. Plutonium is not a fission product, but a transuranic element with an atomic weight greater than uranium. Plutonium is the most efficient fuel for nuclear weapons. 10 pounds, a chunk the size of a grapefruit, is fuel for a hydrogen bomb. An enormous quantity of plutonium was created during the Cold War, when the U.S. manufactured 70,203 nuclear weapons. Pure bomb-grade plutonium was obtained from the mess of fission products in the fuel rods by dissolving the rods in concentrated nitric acid and removing the plutonium from the thermally hot, highly radioactive corrosive solution. Along with plutonium, unfissioned uranium remained in the fuel rods was also extracted for further use. This reclaimed uranium is a mixture of uranium-238 and uranium-235. The uranium-235 must then be enriched to 3% for use again in nuclear reactors. Consequently, uranium-238 again accumulates. Because it came from spent fuel rods, it is contaminated with plutonium and other dangerous elements such as neptunium, also a transuranic element, and possibly with fission products such as technetium and strontium and cesium. Shipments of this polluted reclaimed uranium were sent to Paducah for more than 20 years. Although Paducah was a Department of Energy plant, the private contractors responsible for its well-being were Lockheed Martin and Union Carbide. Recently, the Department of Energy admitted that the Paducah plant is surrounded by high concentrations of plutonium contamination. Pollution has been detected over a mile from the plant. The Ohio River, 2 miles from the plant, contained elevated levels of plutonium, and the element has contaminated streams, ponds, and groundwater. Uranium purified after extraction from the soil contains 3 isotopes, 234, 235, and 238. Purification means the removal of soil together with the daughter products such as radium, radon, polonium, and many other long-lived radioactive decay products. Uranium-238 has a half-life of 4.5 billion years. In the depleted form, after the enrichment process, it still contains small amounts of uranium-235 and uranium-234. All 3 uranium isotopes are alpha emitters and as such are potentially highly carcinogenic. In 1 gram of uranium-238, 12,400 atomic transformations occur each second, and each throws off alpha particles consisting of 2 protons and 2 neutrons. The depleted uranium-238 used for weapons was half the radioactivity of the original natural uranium. Uranium-235 is 0.7% and uranium-238 is 0.93%, because uranium-235 is very energetic. Nevertheless, the radiation emanating from 238 can be dangerous if it enters and resides within the human or animal bodies. Uranium-238 weapons are made even more dangerous by the contaminant isotopes from Paducah plutonium-239 alpha emitter, half-life 24,400 years, and neptunium-237 alpha and gamma emitters, half-life 2 million years. The U.S. military is fond of saying that depleted uranium is less radioactive than naturally occurring uranium. However, uranium-235 is 100% uranium, unlike the uranium ore in the ground, which is considered diluted with soil. Thus, comparing Du with natural uranium ore is like comparing apples and oranges. It is simply not relevant. Let me see how long I've been reading here. I know that I talked for a little while before we got into the reading, so I think I can read a few more. I think I'll read 5 more minutes or so. Medical risks of uranium processing. Uranium processing exposes hundreds of thousands of people to inhaled and ingested radiation throughout the nuclear fuel cycle, which includes mining, milling, enriching, fuel fabrication, nuclear fission, reprocessing, and storage of radioactive waste. Uranium miners are at significant risk for developing lung and other forms of cancers, as demonstrated in workers in Canada, Germany, Namibia, Czech Republic, France, Russia, and the United States. Workers at and neighbors of uranium milling and processing plants are also at risk for cancers. For example, the Feed Materials Production Center at Fernald, Ohio, which commenced operation in 1953, manufactured uranium pellets for plutonium production reactors at Hanford and Rocky Flats, and parts for nuclear weapons made at Rocky Flats and the Y-12 plant at Oak Ridge, Tennessee. During its decades of operation, it released 298,000 pounds of uranium dust into the air, 167,000 pounds into the Great Miami River, and 12.7 million pounds into unlined earthen pits. Large silos on the reservation contain 9,700 tons, or 1,600 to 1,400 curies, which continually emit high concentrations of carcinogenic gas. Local people have developed highly malignant bone sarcomas and other cancers secondary to uranium deposits in their bodies. There are radioactive facilities such as this all over the United States as well as in other countries, all integral components of the nuclear fuel cycle, producing uranium ammunition, uranium fuel rods for nuclear power plants, and plutonium for nuclear weapons. Up to 80 sites in America have been involved in the production, manufacture, development, testing, and storage of uranium-238. Firing ranges for uranium-238 weapons in Madison, Indiana, Yuma, Arizona, and Aberdeen, Maryland may never be decontaminated. Firing ranges in Madison, Indiana, Yuma, Arizona, and Aberdeen, Maryland may never be decontaminated. Uranium-polluted soil was discovered almost a mile away from a munitions production plant in Concord, Massachusetts, where 400,000 pounds of uranium waste lie in an unlined pit. Groundwater and a nearby cranberry bog are contaminated. Ooh, makes you want to eat cranberry sauce now, doesn't it? For a comprehensive list of uranium weapons-related sites, I refer you to an excellent book called Metal of Dishonor, pages 212 to 216. As far back as 1943, scientists in the Manhattan Project postulated that uranium could be viewed as an air and terrain contaminant, saying that inhalation could cause bronchial irritation coming on within a few hours to a few days. They also noted that the acute radiation effects could induce ulcers and perforations of the gut, followed by death. On January 29, 2000, the U.S. Department of Energy finally acknowledged, after many years of denial, that employees of uranium processing facilities experience significantly high rates of leukemia, Hodgkin's disease, and cancers of the prostate, kidney, liver, salivary glands, and lungs. In England, a study commissioned by British Nuclear Fuels and released in July 2000 found a link between radiation and lung cancer at the Springfield Uranium Fuel Fabrication Plant near Preston in Lancashire. And the highest incidence of childhood leukemia in the United Kingdom has been reported around a uranium firing range in Duindrennan, Scotland. Duindrennan, Scotland. Duindrennan, Duindrennan, Scotland. The National Academy of Sciences recently reported that of 144 highly contaminated nuclear sites around the U.S., 109 would remain radioactive in perpetuity because it is virtually impossible to clean them up. And I think that is where I'm going to end, folks. We are on page 151. I really appreciate everyone who listens to our little show and cares enough about their own lives and our own community to do what you can to demand that we at least stop making this contaminant, and that our elected officials do what they can to be responsible and being honest. This is my solution. I think we need a truth and reconciliation program where we let the scientists come clean and say, yes, we've been misleading you all these years, but this is how contaminated and this is how bad it is. We need universal education so that we can have a bunch of nuclear scientists and biologists to help us learn how to remediate our planet. And we need universal health care so that when people get sick from all these contaminants, they can go to the doctor. So I'm going to end there. I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas. Enjoy your day. Enjoy the holiday, even if you're not like a Christian or quote a believer or any of that stuff. This is really more about us just appreciating each other as humans to humans and loving each other. So spend the day just appreciating yourself, even if you don't have family. Appreciate yourself. Pat yourself on the back. You know, thank you for joining us. And really, honestly, I guess we'll see you in the new year because I'll be back in the new year. So I hope you all have a Merry Christmas. Put your courage feet on and remember, happiness is resistance and love truly is greater than fear. Talk to you soon. The Age of Fission radio show brings you book readings, pertinent articles, interviews with both activists and victims of nuclear and environmental contamination. We strive to deliver only the facts from reliable sources. We want to remind you that love is greater than fear, and happiness is resistance. Our dedication to love and happiness paves the road for innovation and healing. As we face our harsh reality, let us hold each other up and rejoice in our humanity. If you want to comment, please send your thoughts to ageoffission@gmail.com. That's AGEOFFISSION @gmail.com. To your host, Lonnie Clark.